Hi there, guys. Laura Aiken here, your elementary sorry, it's my title. Laura Aiken, elementary special education curriculum specialist. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about some successful interventions and ideas for difficult students. So, if you've already looked through all of the materials in the e-course, you will see that one of the resources in there is called May I Have This Dance. I changed it up a little bit to Do You Want to Dance? Because I'm not going to go through everything that's in this resource today. But I'm going to go through some big things, big pieces that I hope will help you refresh and refocus and renew our thoughts, since that is the focus or the theme for our DSD this year. So let's get into it. So, what we're going to talk about today is the dance. So, when I'm talking about the dance, I mean the power struggle. So, do you have some students in your classroom that you may get into some power struggles with, and you feel like, oh my goodness, we are always in this struggle? Well, we're going to talk about that, how to maneuver that dance and get through it. And we're going to talk about the tango. And that's when we have those students who really push our buttons a lot. And I've got some ideas and tips and tricks for that. And then I even have some trick moves for you, things that are going to help you navigate this dance and hopefully avoid getting into it. And then the finale is just some last minute thoughts and strategies for when we have maybe entered the dance and what we need to do to help ourselves when we're there. So let's get to it. So let's just talk about how to make it better. So we've all been in power struggles with kids. It happens all the time. It happens in my own house with my own child. I try not to enter this dance, but it's so hard to avoid it sometimes. So here are some ways to make it better and to avoid getting into that dance. You have some of those students who are going to try all the time to get into the dance with you. And so, one of the biggest things, and I say this all the time, and I can't emphasize it enough, is just to use a calm, neutral voice, no matter what. And that is really, really hard, especially when kids have maybe figured out some of our triggers, figured out ways or things that irritate us. It's really hard to keep that calm, neutral voice. Our voice, and also right here, the fourth bullet down, making eye contact, control your facial expressions, and watch your body language. These two things, our voice, our body language, all of that, give us away too many times, right? And so when we're dealing with a child who has some oppositional or defiant types of behaviors, it's just the best thing that we can do is to be calm and neutral. Number one, because it's not going to give them an edge to know when they've hit a button or hit one of your triggers. And then it helps us as well because once we don't have that calm, neutral voice, once we start yelling or losing our temper, getting into it, then that means we have entered that dance, we've accepted the invitation, and it is game on. So these two are really hard, but anytime you feel like yourself starting to lose control, it is okay not to respond immediately to a student. If they say something, it's okay to count to 5 in your head before you respond to make sure you respond in a calm, neutral voice. Controlling your facial expressions is another big one. A lot of people tell me that my face gives me away 9 times out of 10. So I have to work really hard on my poker face. I have a very expressive face, just in normal conversations. So it's really something that I have to focus on when I'm in these kind of situations with students, which again will help you when you're in the dance, because if you're wondering or concentrating on your voice, your tone of your voice, and your facial expressions, you're less likely to enter that dance and say things out of anger or frustration. Some other things that really help, and I see this a lot when I'm out, like doing observations and such. Some ways that teachers enter the dance without even knowing they've entered the dance with students sometimes is just in our directions. So sometimes just giving clear, short explanations or directions is really helpful. The more times we're wordy and we carry on, that gives the students more opportunity to engage in the dance with us. So if the student's supposed to be working on something at their desk, just giving them a quick reminder, not going through the whole worksheet, but just being like, okay, get started on number one. Remember, we're looking for short vowels today. I'll be back. And walking away and doing a circle around the room and then coming back is a great way, because you've given a short, clear direction to do number one, and you've walked away as well, so they can't even engage in a power struggle with you. Another big thing that I see when we haven't realized we've entered the dance is, let's say I'm at a small group table and I can see Laura over there goofing off and not doing what she needs to, and I holler out and say, Laura, I need you to sit down and get busy. Well, I've inadvertently entered the dance with Laura, because Laura is one that is going to be like, oh, really? You're going to call me out in front of all my friends? Well, let me show you how that goes. And we've escalated the behavior just by calling out in that moment. Think about it as yourself as an adult. Let's say you made a mistake on something. You wouldn't want to be called into the boss's office with all your friends sitting there and everybody hearing all of what the boss has to say to you about your mistake. So we shouldn't do the same thing with these children. So if they are out of their area or not doing what needs to be done, sometimes it's worth taking a 30-second walk over to that student, having a quick little private conversation with them about what they should be doing, and then going back to our small group. Because otherwise we've inadvertently entered that dance and it will just blow up and we've lost our entire small group time anyway. So sometimes just taking those small walks is worth it. Let's see, the other big things to concentrate on in this section is understanding you need to have clear boundaries and predetermined consequences for behaviors. So think through things. Think about, okay, if I do this and he does that, what am I going to do in that situation? So thinking about those things ahead of time really helps, because sometimes when we're having to think on the fly and we're like, oh, I don't know what to do right now, that's where we get ourselves in trouble. And with sometimes I've heard teachers say, oh my gosh, you are going to have ISS for the rest of the year. Well, we can't really enforce having ISS for the rest of the year. That's not logical or something that can be done. And that's something that we would say in the heat of the moment. So really thinking about what your consequences are going to be for different behaviors is really important. Another thing that I say is, if you've got a really difficult student, someone who's trying to enter the dance with you every day, multiple times a day, and it's going to wear you down, this is when having your partner next door, your teacher partner next door, you guys have some like a tag team kind of thing going on, and just letting your partner teacher know that sometimes I'm gonna have to walk over and tap out for a second, and I need you to walk in, just make sure the kids aren't falling apart while I go take a drink and refocus and come back, because it takes a lot of energy to deal with these students who are constantly looking for that power struggle. So if you're about to lose it, don't be afraid to tap out, because it is totally worth that 2 minutes to tap out, get a drink, refocus, and go back in, than to lose your temper or lose that power struggle with that child, because that's the pattern that a lot of these students have gotten into over the years. It starts at home and then it just carries over into school. They know that if they continue to act a certain way and continue to go on, that eventually the adults are going to wear down and give in to what they want to do. So this is where we have got to be extra strong and don't wear out and don't give in. And we've got to be super consistent about that. And that's really, really hard sometimes with these students who have figured this game out and they figure that they can wear the adults out. So just be persistent and don't be afraid to remove yourself every once in a while. Sometimes you just need a break, and if you've got that student, sometimes talking to your instructional coach. Maybe you've got a code word that you can even text to them, saying, lemonade, meaning I need to go get a drink and can you come in here for just 2 minutes to help me with this? Um, and then the other big thing that I say on this one is just see the child as a complete person with strengths and weaknesses, okay? A lot of times we focus on all the things that they're doing wrong and we get so focused on the negative that we forget that there's a kid in there with lots of strengths. And our job is to help find those strengths. And a lot of times they're really hard to find, especially if they're really tough and they go on and on. But the longer we don't engage in this dance, don't engage in this power struggle, the better off we're going to be with this child to discovering their strengths. The next slide is all about making it worse. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's the absolute, or it's the exact opposite of what I just told you. So focus more on making it better, not making it worse, because making it worse is just the opposite. So don't lose your temper. Don't threaten them. Don't try to embarrass the kid. Don't get annoyed. Okay, those are all the things not to do. So focus on ways to make it better, not to make it worse. The tango. Let's watch this little video real fast about a tango. And maybe this will remind you of some things you've seen in your classroom. Maybe. So I showed you that clip because it reminds me so much of, I don't know, I just find it synonymous with what happens in the classroom. So, like that whole first part where Gomez is kissing up her arms and she's just ignoring it the whole time. And so that just reminds me of the classroom sometimes where we have kids who try to do little things that annoy us, and sometimes our best bet is just to ignore it. Um, my family gets tickled at me sometimes because there will be different noises or different things, small, tiny things that they're trying to do to annoy me. But I've gotten so good at tuning out different noises and things like that that it doesn't even faze me anymore. And so they'll all start giggling and carrying on. I'm like, what? And they'll be like, we've been going on for 5 minutes and you didn't. I'm like, I don't know why y'all are trying to even do that stuff. I've learned to tune it out after working with kids so much. And so, that part reminded me of being in the classroom. And then when she goes spinning off and it's a fire, do you ever feel like you're on fire in the classroom and you're like, oh my Lord, this is going on for days? So, the tango, I don't know, for some reason, it just reminds me so much of dealing with kids and the back and forth and all the things that can happen. So, we're going to start right here with emotions. When we have students who have these types of behaviors, there's really only two emotions that we need to have throughout the day. And it's really hard and it's very taxing to focus on these emotions all day because we're juggling so many different things in the classroom. But the student who's giving you a lot of struggle and is wanting to engage in the dance with you all the time, when that student's emotions are neutral or positive, that's when we've got to be positive and engaging with them. So if they're having, just kind of a neutral kind of morning, they haven't started anything, that's the time to, lay in some positive phrasing and things like that. So being like, oh my gosh, thanks for getting to work this morning. I really love it. I love how you got your morning workout and you're ready to work. Or, hey man, that's a really cool jacket. Love that. Whatever it is, that's the time to be positive and engaging with that student. But when that student is trying to be negative and their emotions are negative, that's when we have got to be neutral and businesslike. So, again, going back to what I said was really important, being neutral. So, it's really hard because never during the day do you get to be a human and get frustrated and be mad, because that's when they know that they've got your got you going and you've entered that dance with them. So this is really important and it's really hard, um, to keep up with those two emotions all day. Another big thing, and I feel like this is missing a lot with our students who have these types of behaviors, is this area here about offering to talk. It takes a little bit of time to do this, but this time that you take to offer to talk with the student is going to make a world of difference. And it's going to take some time to do this as well. You're going to have to offer to talk several times before we start breaking down those walls of the student. So after they've calmed down after an episode, we've got to help the kid put their feelings into word and label their emotions. A lot of times they don't know how to do that. No one's taken the time to do that with them before. And so this is where we need to ask different questions like, what can I do to help your day go better? Am I doing something to be disrespectful? Which I know you're looking at that like, seriously? Flipping this, I call this like flipping the script. Sometimes, because a lot of times after students had an episode, they've gotten talked to their whole life, but it's always a negative kind of thing. Like, why were you doing that? Don't you know better? That sort of thing. And when we flip the script like this, it stops that line of thinking and they're like, oh, wait, we can look at this a different way. So by asking questions like that, maybe we can start the conversation with, I could tell you were getting really frustrated or angry over this. Can you tell me what was going on? Was it something that I did? Did I do something in the morning? Did I say something that upset you? When you word it like that, it flips that script, and then that helps us get to what we want the student to tell us, like they don't understand the work or they really don't like it when this happens, and it helps us lead right into this last box of that positive relationship. Because we want to establish a relationship away from the dance floor, so away from those times that we are they're trying to dance with us and engage in that power struggle. So when we offer to talk, we are automatically feeding into building that relationship away from the dance floor. The other big thing here on the second bullet is recognize that the child is not the problem is the problem. That is really hard, because we're adults and we're human, and we have our own emotions along with this. And so what that means is that, again, this has probably been a pattern of behavior for this child for a long time. And there's never been an adult there who's offered to talk to them in this way and try to set up a positive relationship. So it's not that the child is the problem. The problem is that there hasn't been an adult along the way to take the time to do what needs to be done to help this child get through some of their difficult behaviors. And so that's what that means, that the problem is the problem. The problem is the fact is that we have a child here who doesn't have the skills that they need to work through some of their emotions and these power struggles because an adult's never taken the time to do that. Which again takes us to, don't take that behavior personally. A lot of times they're doing this because they've learned it's worked. They don't like doing this work, or they've gotten their way by acting this way with other adults. And so they continue to act that way because it's worked for them in the past. So it's not a personal thing. They're in a pattern and they're stuck in that pattern. We've got to help them get out of that. And then also with that relationship, don't start the dance. So this goes back to everything that we started with at the beginning, keeping your calm voice, making it better, all those make it better techniques, because when we start the dance, then we're ruining that relationship that we're working so hard to build up with that child. Okay. And then the trick moves. So there's going to be times that we get stuck in the dance and the power struggle. It happens. We are human. We walk right into it sometimes. And then we go, oh no, what did I do? So when you're there, that's okay. So I call these my trick moves. And these are the words that make it work in the classroom. So these are just different phrases that I keep in my back pocket for when I'm working with students here. The two big areas that I'm going to focus on is right here on distract. Um, I use distraction techniques all of the time when I'm in the classroom with kids. And a lot of time it makes people upset because they're like, you just let them get out of it, which that's not the case for this. I'm not trying to get them out of it. I'm trying to break this chain and this cycle of getting into this power struggle. So um, I use lots of different distracting techniques. Sometimes I pull out different weird, like this second one. Did you know that I won a fishing pole? I mean, sometimes I'll start talking about the craziest things with kids just to break the cycle of what we're in with this power struggle. Another one that you can use is this last one. I need you to run an errand for me. Just like we talked about getting with your teacher partner when you need a break. This is another thing where maybe you have like purple sticky notes on your desk. And all you do is write a big old heart on it because you love your teaching partner. So when this child's starting to gear up and trying to enter that dance, you can be like, oh, Laura, hey, can you run this over to Miss Aiken next door? I need something from her. And so you fold that up and she runs it over. And you've already established with her that anytime Laura comes with the purple sticky note, I just need you to hand her something. I don't care what it is. She was about to start into this power struggle. She was trying to enter it, and I'm trying to diffuse that situation. And so you've distracted that child about what they were upset about or what they were trying to avoid in that moment. And you've written a cute little heart note to your teacher friend to let them know, thank you for being there for me and supporting me with this student. And so when they come back, a lot of times they've forgotten that they were trying to get into a power struggle with you and they get right back to work. Another big thing that I use in here is the choices. So again, to help avoid that power struggle, sometimes you just get stuck and it doesn't matter what, they are not going to do whatever you've asked them to do. So this is where choices come in because it makes them feel like they still have some power. And so it's when you can say, hey, you can choose to do this task that they're not wanting to do. Maybe it's a paper pencil task. You can do this at your desk, or you can get a whiteboard and go work on the carpet. Or, hey, today you can choose to sit on the beanbag or sit on these chairs over here to do your work. So just giving them lots of choices helps them feel like they still have some power and some control during their day. But you are still orchestrating what that looks like. So make sure you're okay with the choices, because if you are not okay with the choices, then so sorry. So make sure whenever you're getting choices, it's something that you can live with. All right. And there we go. Last but not least is our finale. We made it. So this is kind of a paradigm shift, this last little bit. And some of the stuff we've talked about today is we've just got to think about it completely differently. And it's hard. This is hard to think about this in a different way because we've, gotten into patterns ourselves as adults. And so we've got to figure out some workarounds and different ways to handle these students who have these types of behaviors. The first thing we have to recognize is that a student can't be made to do these things. We're never going to make them do it. So we've got to figure out other ways to make that happen. And so that's where we can work on our choices and our trick moves. And this is another piece of the paradigm shift. And I think a lot of adults have a hard time hearing this, is that when we give up our power, a student doesn't have anything to resist. So when we give up our power, we've actually given ourselves a lot of power. When we stop the fight with this kid and we choose to handle it in a different way, then we've taken back our power. And so that is a big, huge paradigm shift. And that's really hard for us to do, especially as teachers, because I've got this whole room of kids that I'm, in charge of, and I've got to be the one with the power and such. You still have the power. You just have to use your power in a different way. And again, that goes with our workarounds and using our choices and our trick moves and different things like that. Again, you can see here the neutral tone of voice is on this page again, because I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a neutral tone of voice and almost kind of sound like a broken record sometimes. So, if you've started, everybody's doing small group stuff and you're walking around monitoring it, and you know that task is going to be hard for that student, and this is the time that they normally want to enter the dance with you and have a power struggle, this is the time where you sounding like a broken record is the perfect thing, and you can be like, okay, get started at number one. I'm going to take a walk. I'll be right back. And you walk around and you come back around. If they're still not doing it, oh, remember number one, you're looking for the short O. And you go and you come back around, and you're just a broken record going over and over what it is. And then the last thing on this is the fogging technique. So the fogging technique is where we act like nothing matters to us. So if you've got a student who's trying to manipulate or affect you or push your buttons, this is when the fogging technique needs to come out. And it's almost like a fog has gone over you. And no matter what they say, it's not going to bother you. So this only works if you can really do that and pretend like things don't bother you. And even if they really do. And this is where it's important to know your triggers. Okay. So I've had people that I've worked with where there were certain things, like certain words that they could not stand to hear kids say that, which is totally fine. Know that's your trigger. And when you know that, and you know that it's going to be coming, then you can prepare yourself to have a fog over yourself, and then also know that that's the time to tap out. So I've got the fog over myself, but it's really upset me. I'm tapping out, and I'm going to let someone else come in, but I'm going to keep that fog over until I leave that room so they know that they haven't gotten under my skin. I had to do this when I was in the classroom. I had a little girl who was constantly rubbing my arms, rubbing my tummy. And if you've never seen me, I'm an overweight woman, and I've been overweight my whole life. And she would be rubbing my tummy, and it used to really, really bother me. I used to be very self-conscious about it. And I was always backing away from her, and she was always trying to do it more and more. And finally, one day I was just like, okay, I'm just going to let her go for it. Like, goodness. And so she was just going to town, rubbing my tummy and squeezing my arms. And she finally said to me, she goes, Miss Aiken, you're just so gushy. And so when I found out she wasn't doing it to irritate me, she was doing it because she just liked the feel of my gushy tummy and my gushy arms. So, but I had to use that fogging technique in that moment, because I was like, oh, this is so bothering me. You're touching all of the parts of my body that I'm not comfortable with. And that's when I found out, oh, she's got some sensory issues, So I had to find some replacement things that she could use that were gushy so she wouldn't be constantly rubbing my tummy and my arms. But then I just kind of got over it after that. I was like, okay, well, I'm gushy. Go ahead. Let's everybody get gushy, Miss Aiken. So that's what that fogging technique is about, is just knowing your triggers and not letting them get through to you during that time. But also know that you're a human as well, and you got to tap out sometimes. That's where your next door teacher partner can be your best friend. Okay. So that's all. There's a lot more in the document that I put in the e-course. So if you want to know even more, you can look through there. I'm also happy to come out and help and observe in your classroom, give you more ideas and very specific trick moves and things like that. Just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to help. So I hope this gave you some new ideas, or at least refreshed and renewed some ideas that you've had in the past. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging out with me.